Every generation has a legendary trio. MSN, BBC, sure. But before then, there was a trio so dominant, so technically brilliant, that they didn't just win, they revolutionized football. Over 250 goals, 5 Serie A titles, 2 European Cups, and a revolution in football that left everyone in awe. Frank Rijkaard, Ruud Gullit, and Marco van Basten didn't just dominate football, they redefined it. They crushed Real Madrid 5-0 in the semi-final of the Champions League, ruled Europe with AC Milan, and delivered moments of pure genius, like Van Basten's impossible Euro 88 volley. Defenders feared them, and fans worshipped them. But what made this trio so unstoppable? Was it raw talent, tactical genius, or something even greater? How did they change football forever? Let's unravel the story of the trio that terrorized football like never before. In the mid-1980s, AC Milan was a club in crisis. They were relegated in 1980 due to a match-fixing scandal. The return to Serie A was also not very inspiring. There were financial struggles, loss of direction, and mediocrity everywhere. A club once feared across Europe had become just another team. However, everything changed in 1986 when Silvio Berlusconi took over the club. He didn't just take control as a new owner. Rather, he took the reins as a man on a mission. He wasn't interested in just competing, he wanted to own football. Berlusconi knew that to rebuild Milan, he needed revolutionary players, the players who would change the shape of AC Milan and make everyone fall in love with the club. So, here comes Ruud Gullit in 1987. He was a midfield powerhouse who could play anywhere in attack, midfield, even deeper when needed to dictate the tempo. With a magical player like Gullit, there was need for a ruthless striker in front of goal who would exploit the spaces and chances created by this midfield maestro. The best player for this role was Marco van Basten, one of the most clinical and stylish strikers the game had ever seen. He was already a goal-scoring machine before coming to Milan and had bagged 128 goals in 133 games for Ajax. But the change of clubs wasn't so fortunate for him at first, as he spent his first season out of the football pitch because of injury. People started to down him in a tough defensive league like Serie A. On the other hand, Berlusconi was restless. His final piece to the puzzle was Frank Rijkaard. Unlike others, he had a detour. He'd fallen out with Ajax, made a strange move to Sporting CP, and ended up on a loan at Real Zaragoza. His misery ended when Milan saw his true value as a midfield enforcer with intelligence and precision. With the signings of these attacking players, Milan also needed some foundational changes. So, the last masterstroke Berlusconi made was the appointment of Arrigo Sacchi. Sacchi's ideas were radical. He rejected the defensive, cautious football that dominated Serie A. He wanted high pressing, fluid movement, and total control of the game. He didn't see defenders, midfielders, or forwards. He saw a unit that moved together, attacked together, and defended together. As time passed and the 1987-88 season unfolded, it became clear that Milan was no longer a club in crisis. Milan was about to take the world by storm. Under the tactics of Sacchi, whenever he had Van Basten, Gullit, and Rijkaard on the field together, it became magical. Van Basten wasn't just a goalscorer, he was a footballing artist. His movement was almost mathematical and always in the right place, with a unique pace exactly 2 steps ahead of defenders. He could score from anywhere, volleys, headers, chip shots, or first-time finishes that seemed impossible. Nothing was tough for this pure poacher. Gullit was a bit different, a force of nature that played with effortless swagger, a ball carrier who could drive through teams like a runaway train, yet still had the finesse to execute perfect passes and delicate touches. He was known for his incredible ball control, dribbling, vision, and an eye for goal, making him one of the most complete players of his era. Finally, Rijkaard acted as a glue between these two. He used to break up attacks, dictate play, and was the man of crisis on the pitch. He was like Busquets from the golden era of football, not the flashiest on the pitch, but certainly the most important link to the team. Together, they started to dominate the domestic and European competitions, but no one saw them as a feared trio. Then came their defining moment in the 1989 European Cup semi-final against Real Madrid. In a high-stakes game against five-time European champions and giants of the game, it was supposed to be a tough challenge, but pundits saw Madrid demolish that day. Milan won 5-0. It wasn't just a victory, it was a footballing lesson. AC Milan was all over Madrid that day. They didn't just press, they smothered them. Every Madrid attack was shut down before it could even start. Gullit owned the midfield, Van Basten scored with ruthless efficiency, and Rijkaard dictated the tempo like a chess master. Real Madrid's coach, Leo Benhaca, admitted after the match, "That was not football as I knew it. That was something different." After that came the 1989 European Cup final against Steaua Bucharest. The match was over before half-time. Van Basten and Gullit each scored twice. Milan won 4-0, and it could have been more if the coach hadn't decided to control the game in the second half. However, what made Milan truly special wasn't just the wins, it was how they won. Despite having dazzling stars, Sacchi's team wasn't built on individual brilliance, it was a machine where every player moved with precision, defenders pushed up high, midfielders controlled the tempo, and forwards attacked in waves. It was total football, faster, sharper, and deadlier than ever before. Dominating games in a season is sweet, but trophies define an era of true ruling. They might have upset stronger teams once or twice, but by the end of the season, no one remembers because they didn't win any major trophies. But this fiery trio found their groove. They made sure that no one would forget them for ages. AC Milan became an unstoppable force that ruled Italy and conquered Europe. We should understand one important thing. Serie A in the late 1980s and early 1990s wasn't just any other league. It was the best in the world, and I mean the best, the home of the toughest defenses and the greatest footballing minds. Diego Maradona was leading Napoli, Lothar Matthäus and Jurgen Klinsmann were running Inter, and Juventus had a new wave of emerging stars. Yet, despite all the competition, AC Milan stood above them all. They won 5 Serie A titles during that time, and their most remarkable domestic feat came in the 1991-92 season, when they completed an entire Serie A campaign unbeaten. Yes, you heard that right. 58 matches without a single loss, a record that stood for decades. The Dutch trio completely dismantled the idea that Italian football had to be slow, defensive, and centered on counterattacks. During the same time, they won the European Cup, which is the old name of the Champions League, in 1989 and 1990. These back-to-back victories made them the first team in the modern era to win consecutive European Cups. This sheer dominance wasn't just limited to club football. In 1988, Van Basten, Gullit, and Rijkaard led the Netherlands to their first ever international trophy and won the European Championship. In the final against the Soviet Union, Gullit opened the scoring with a towering header, but it was Van Basten who sealed the victory with one of the greatest goals football has ever seen. A first-time volley from an impossible angle that stunned the world. That goal became more than just a piece of football history and inspired volley-hitting technique to novel heights. It was the moment that defined Van Basten's genius and the legacy of this golden generation. He won the Ballon d'Or in 1988, 1989, and 1992. But then happened an unlikely fate that no one imagined. In 1993, Van Basten suffered an ankle injury, which everyone considered normal. However, that recurring curse forced him to retire early at just 28 years of age. Gullit and Rijkaard continued to play after him, but the golden triangle was broken. They lost the spark and killing instinct that Van Basten was providing in front of the goal. Sadly, the golden era of AC Milan came to an end, just like all great dynasties eventually faced their deadline. AC Milan from 1988 to 1992 wasn't just a dominant team, they were a blueprint for the world that attacking football can win you matches. Before Milan, Italian football was built on the principles of catenaccio. Teams used to sit in deep defensive lines, counter-attacks, and an obsession with protecting the leads. Arrigo Sacchi broke the mold. As we described earlier, he pushed the defensive line up to midfield and employed a relentless attacking approach. These tactics belonged to the future, and no one knew them until Sacchi showed up on the pitch. Their style became the foundation for modern football. Pep Guardiola's tiki-taka in Barcelona and Man City, Jurgen Klopp's gegenpressing, and now Hansi Flick's high defensive line to set offside traps in Bayern and Barcelona, all can trace their roots back to Sacchi's AC Milan. The idea of dominating your opponent by suffocating them in their half, playing with positional fluidity, and controlling every aspect of the game. AC Milan did it first. However, the legacy of this golden trio was more personal than tactical. Marco van Basten was arguably the most complete striker of his generation. He was technically perfect, tactically brilliant, and had a football intelligence that made him unplayable. Before Messi and Ronaldo, there was a beast who could have won more than 5 Ballon d'Or awards if fate had just been a little tender. It's a shame that one of football's greatest talents played his last game at just 28 years old. Even now, when people discuss the greatest strikers of all time, there's always a question: what if Van Basten had played longer? Ruud Gullit was the epitome of total footballing philosophy. His impact went beyond Milan. He wasn't just a footballer, he was a revolutionary, bending power and technique in a way few had ever seen before. He left the club in 1993 after Van Basten and became one of the pioneers of player managers in England. He became the first black manager in Premier League history and led Chelsea to FA Cup victory in 1997, the club's first major trophy in 26 years. His versatility, leadership, and charisma made him an icon not just in Italy and the Netherlands, but across the whole footballing world. Frank Rijkaard took a different path. After leaving Milan, he returned to Ajax and helped them win the Champions League in 1995 before retiring. However, his true legacy came in management, where he led Barcelona to their first Champions League title in 14 years in 2006. He paved the way for Guardiola's era of dominance. Rijkaard understood football in a way few others did, first as a player, then as a manager. He reshaped Barcelona's philosophy in the modern era. This iconic trio didn't just win, they rewrote football's history. That is why, even today, they remain one of the greatest forces the game has ever seen.